My name is Grace Myers, and I'm 28 years old. 3 hours ago, my mother grabbed my wrist in a lawyer's office and whispered that if I received a single penny from my grandmother's will, she would make my life a living hell, and she meant every word. The lawyer read 5 pages. The house, the savings, the jewelry, all of it went to my mother. She smiled like she'd already won. Then the lawyer cleared his throat and said there was an amendment, filed 3 days before my grandmother died. And my mother's face lost every trace of color. Before I tell you what happened next, if you enjoy stories like this, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this one truly resonates with you. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where you all are listening from. Now, let me take you back 6 months, to the last time my grandmother ever called me. It's a Tuesday evening in September. I'm grading spelling tests at my kitchen table. I teach second grade at Millbrook Elementary, when my phone lights up. Grandma Elaine. I pick up before the second ring. Gracie? Her voice is thin. Not the warm, steady voice that used to call me in from the backyard. Something underneath it sounds hollow. Grandma, are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. Listen to me. A pause. I hear her breathing, slow and careful. I need you to remember something. No matter what happens, I've taken care of it. I set down my red pen. Taken care of what? Just remember. Promise me. I promise. But Grandma, what? Tell me about your kids, the little ones at school, the boy who draws horses on everything. And just like that, she changes the subject. That's Elaine Whitfield for you, the woman who raised me more than my own mother did. She picked me up from school every afternoon while my mom was out networking or lunching or doing whatever mattered more than me. Grandma taught me to make pie crust from scratch. She read me Charlotte's Web 4 times in one summer. And every time my mother made me feel small, Grandma would sit me on her porch swing and say, "You have more spine than you think, Gracie." We talk for 11 minutes. She asks about my students, my apartment, whether I'm eating enough, normal things. But her voice never comes back to full strength, and she never explains what she meant. The next morning I call her back. The phone rings twice. My mother picks up. "Mom, I'm calling for Grandma." "Mom's resting. Don't call this number again." The line goes dead. Over the next week, I call 11 times. I keep a tally on a sticky note by my phone like some kind of sad scoreboard. 3 times the call goes straight to voicemail. Twice my mother picks up and hangs up without a word. And the rest just ring and ring. On day 8, I drive 40 minutes to Grandma's house on Maple Street. The porch light is off, which is wrong. Grandma keeps it on until 10 every night, always has. I knock. Nothing. I knock harder. The door finally opens, but it's not Grandma standing there. It's Rick, my stepfather. He fills the doorway with his arms crossed, still wearing his work boots inside the house, which Grandma would never allow. "Your mother said no visitors. Elaine needs rest, and not drama." "She's my grandmother, Rick. I just want to see her." "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Grace." He closes the door. I stand on the porch listening to the lock click into place. The next day, I try Mrs. Patterson, Grandma's neighbor for 30 years. She sounds confused on the phone. "Oh, honey, Diane told us Elaine moved to a care facility up in Ridgewood." But Grandma hasn't moved anywhere. I know because when I drove to Maple Street, and I looked up at her bedroom window, and the lamp was on. The one with the yellow shade she's had since I was 6. She was in that house, 15 feet from where I stood on her own porch. That's when something shifts inside me. My mother isn't taking care of Grandma. My mother is keeping her, and she's making sure I can't get close enough to find out why. 3 months pass, 91 days. I don't see my grandmother once. Every Sunday I write her a card. Short things, how my students are doing, what the weather's like, that I made her peach cobbler recipe and burned the top. I mail them to Maple Street. I have no idea if she ever holds them in her hands. My mother calls me exactly once during those 3 months. Not to update me on Grandma's health, not to ask how I'm doing. Mom's changing her estate plan. It's what she wants. Don't make a scene. I grip the phone so tight my knuckles ache. "What do you mean? You're changing it?" "It means it's handled. It means you should focus on your little teaching job and let the adults manage things." My little teaching job. I make $34,000 a year. I looked into hiring an elder law attorney. The retainer alone would take 3 months of rent. I have no proof of anything except a feeling in my gut and a porch door locked in my face. I'm completely powerless, and my mother knows it. Then, a Tuesday night, late November, my phone buzzes. Unknown number. Shen, a text message, 4 lines. Your grandmother is in hospice now. She asks about you every day. I'm sorry I can't say more. Please don't give up on her. No name, no explanation. Just someone reaching out through a crack in the wall my mother built. I read that message 7 times. I screenshot it. I press my phone against my chest like it's a letter from a war zone, because in a way, it is. Someone knows the truth. Someone is watching. But who? And I sit on the floor of my apartment that night, back against the wall, a box of old photos open in my lap. There's one from my 8th birthday. Grandma and me blowing out candles together, her arm around my shoulders, both of us laughing. My mother isn't in the frame. I don't think she was in the room. I start doing the math in my head. Not money math, loss math. If I stay quiet, I lose the chance to say goodbye to the only person who ever fought for me. I lose every photo, every journal, and every piece of jewelry Grandma promised would be mine someday. I lose the house where I learned what love was supposed to feel like. But worse than all of that, I lose myself. Because this is the pattern. When I was 18, Grandma gave me her old Buick so I could drive to college. My mother sold it within a month, said it was an eyesore in the driveway. I said nothing. When my mother told her friends at church that I was ungrateful and distant, I said nothing. But when she forgot my college graduation, I said nothing. 28 years of nothing. If I stay quiet now, Grandma dies thinking I didn't care enough to fight back. I kept asking myself, was I wrong for wanting to see my own grandmother? Was I being selfish, like my mother always said? Or was she the one who had crossed every line? Honestly, I still don't know if I waited too long to push back. What would you have done? Would you have fought harder? Or would you have been afraid of losing everything too? Tell me in the comments, because back then, I really needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. I don't sleep that night. By morning, I have a plan. Not a great one, but a plan. Years ago, Grandma added me as a secondary contact on her insurance. I remember because she made me write down the policy number on an index card. Keep this somewhere safe, Gracie, just in case. At the time, I thought she was being dramatic. But now I understand. She was thinking ahead long before I realized anyone needed to. I call the insurance company. After 40 minutes on hold, a kind woman confirms Grandma is receiving hospice care through Meadowbrook Home Health. I hang up and drive straight there. The lobby smells like floor cleaner and flowers that are one day past fresh. I approach the front desk and give my name. The woman behind the counter types, pauses, and looks up at me with practiced sympathy. I'm sorry, ma'am. Your name isn't on the approved visitor list. I'm her granddaughter, her only granddaughter. I understand. But the primary contact, a Diane Myers, provided a specific list. We're required to follow it. My mother put together a list of people allowed to see my dying grandmother, and left me off it. I sit in the parking lot for an hour. The engine is off. My hands are on the steering wheel, and I'm not sure when they started shaking. Then I see a woman in scrubs walking out the side entrance, middle-aged, tired, carrying a canvas tote. She reaches her car, then pauses, looks across the lot, looks straight at me through my windshield, holds my gaze for 3-4 seconds. Then she turns away and gets in her car. I don't know her name, not yet. 2 weeks later, my phone rings at 7 in the morning. My mother's name on the screen feels like a stone dropping into water. Mom passed this morning. Funeral's Thursday. Wear something appropriate. Not, I'm sorry, Grace. Not, she went peacefully. Not, are you okay? Instructions, that's what I get. A dress code. Thursday comes. The church is half full. Neighbors, book club women, a few cousins I haven't seen in years. Grandma's casket sits beneath a spray of white roses that my mother almost certainly picked out for the photos. And there is Diane, center stage, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief, hugging every single person who walks through the door. I was with her every single day until the end, she tells Mrs. Patterson. She says it loud enough for the whole pew to hear. I never left her side. I stand in the back row. Nobody asks how I'm doing. Nobody asks where I've been. They already have Diane's version of the story. Rick passes me on his way to the restroom. Doesn't look at me. Just mutters, "Don't cause any trouble today." I watch my mother accept sympathy for a death she made lonelier than it had to be. And something inside me turns very still and very cold. Then, a hand on my shoulder. Gentle. I turn. It's the woman from the parking lot. Same tired eyes. She's in a dark blouse now instead of scrubs, but I recognize her instantly. She leans close. "She talked about you. Every day." Before I can say a word, before I can even ask her name, she steps back, turns, and disappears through the side door of the church. Every day. Grandma asked about me every day. 1 week after the funeral, as an email lands in my inbox from the law office of Howard Callahan. Subject line: Estate of Elaine R. Whitfield. Reading of Last Will and Testament. Friday, 2 o'clock. Please confirm attendance. My phone rings before I finish reading. Diane. "You got the email?" "Yes." "Just show up and keep quiet." "Why would I need to keep quiet?" "Because there's nothing in that will for you, Grace." "How do you know that?" A pause, then flat and final. "Because I made sure of it." 6 words. That's all it takes to confirm what I've feared for 3 months. My mother didn't just take care of Grandma, she took care of the paperwork too. She made sure every dollar, every floorboard, every piece of my grandmother's life was pointed in one direction: hers. I set the phone down on my kitchen counter and stare at the ceiling. No lawyer, no savings, no recording of that call. It's my word against hers, and in this family, my word has never been worth much. I think about calling one of those free legal hotlines. I think about driving to the police station. I think about standing up in the lawyer's office and telling everyone what Diane did. But with what proof? A blocked phone log, a parking lot memory, a stranger who touched my shoulder and walked away? I don't have a hand to play. My mother holds every card. But somewhere underneath all that, underneath the panic and the grief, I hear Grandma's voice from that September phone call. A thin but certain: "I've taken care of it." I still don't know what that means. But Friday, I'll be there. And I won't keep quiet. Not this time. Thursday night. The apartment is quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own breathing. I'm sitting cross-legged on my bed with a shoebox of photographs. Grandma and me at the county fair, powdered sugar on our chins. Grandma teaching me to sew a button, my fingers clumsy, her hands steady over mine. But Grandma at my high school graduation, holding a sign that said, "That's my girl," in block letters she'd painted herself. My phone buzzes. "Rick. Tomorrow is about respecting your mother's sacrifices. Elaine would be ashamed of you if you made a fuss." I read it twice. Then I set the phone face down. Elaine would be ashamed. He actually typed those words. The man who locked me out of her house. Had the man who stood in her doorway like a bouncer at a club and told me not to cause drama while my grandmother was dying on the other side of the wall. I pick up the photo from the county fair. Grandma is looking at the camera, but her hand is on my shoulder. It's always on my shoulder. "You have more spine than you think, Gracie." And then the other voice, from that last phone call. "No matter what happens, I've taken care of it." I put the photos back in the box. I set my alarm for 7. I lay out a navy dress. Simple, clean, something Grandma would approve of. I don't know what tomorrow holds. I don't know what's waiting in that lawyer's office. But I decide something in the dark, with my grandmother's voice echoing in my chest. I'm going to show up. I'm going to sit in that chair, and I'm not going to let anyone make me feel small. Not tomorrow. Friday, 1:47 p.m. The law office of Howard Callahan sits on the second floor of an old brick building on Main Street, right above the hardware store. I take the narrow stairs slowly. Each step creaks like it's announcing me. The conference room is small, wood-paneled walls, a long oak table, a window that looks out onto the town square where kids are chasing pigeons in the afternoon sun. It smells like coffee and old paper. I'm not the first to arrive. Diane is already seated to the left of the head of the table, hair freshly blown out, black dress, pearl earrings. Grandma's pearl earrings, I notice. Bay already on her ears before the will has even been read. Rick sits beside her, arms folded, jaw set. He doesn't acknowledge me. Aunt Linda, my mother's younger sister, is across from them, clutching her purse in her lap like a life preserver. We make brief eye contact. She gives me a tight, nervous smile. Two women I recognize from Grandma's church sit near the window, Barbara and Joan, Grandma's closest friends. They nod at me, but there's something behind their eyes. Pity. Or maybe judgment. Diane's funeral performance is still fresh. At the head of the table sits Howard Callahan, 60s, silver-haired, reading glasses perched at the tip of his nose, calm in a way that fills the room. In front of him is a document folder, thick, held together by a binder clip. But I notice something. The folder isn't one stack, it's two. The top section is thinner, held by a blue clip. Beneath it, a second section, thicker, secured with a red one. Two sections, two clips. Thank you all for being here, Callahan says. We'll begin in a moment. I take the last empty chair, at the far end of the table, alone. Callahan opens the blue-clipped section and arranges his papers. The room settles into the kind of silence that presses against your ears. Then my mother moves. She leans toward me, not casually, not subtly. She reaches across the gap between our chairs and grabs my wrist. Not my hand, my wrist. Her fingers close around it like a cuff, and I feel her nails press into the thin skin above my pulse. She pulls me close. Her perfume is sharp, gardenias and something chemical underneath. If you get a single penny, she whispers, I will make your life a living hell. Don't test me. Her eyes are steady, flat. She means it the way people mean things they've rehearsed. I don't pull my hand away. I don't flinch. I look straight at her, and for the first time in my life, I don't look down first. Something has changed in me. Though I can't name it yet. Maybe it's the 3 months. Maybe it's the funeral. Maybe it's the fact that she's wearing Grandma's earrings like a trophy before the body is cold in the ground. I say nothing, but I don't blink either. Diane releases my wrist and straightens in her chair, satisfied. I glance toward the head of the table. Callahan is watching. He doesn't say a word, but his eyes drop to where Diane's hand just was, my wrist, at the white marks from her grip already fading, and something shifts in his expression. Not surprise. Something quieter, like confirmation. Then he opens the folder. In that moment, I understand something I haven't before. My mother isn't confident. She's afraid. Not of me, of what Grandma might have done. Callahan begins with the original will, dated 14 months ago. He reads slowly, clearly, the way someone reads when they know every word matters. On page 1 and 2, the family home at 412 Maple Street, left to Diane Myers. The house where I learned to walk. The house where Grandma read me stories on the porch swing. The house where I stood outside and couldn't get past the front door. Diane's. Page 3. Savings accounts totaling $890,000, accumulated over Elaine Whitfield's entire working life as a school librarian and through careful, decades-long investment. Left to Diane Myers. Diane shifts in her chair. A small, satisfied motion. Page 4. The heirloom jewelry collection. Pieces passed down from Grandma's own mother, including a sapphire ring Grandma once told me would be mine on my wedding day. Left to Diane Myers. Page 5. Vehicle, furniture, books, personal effects. To be distributed at Diane's discretion. At Diane's discretion, meaning my mother decides whether I get a single photograph, a single teacup. My mother turns to me. Though she doesn't bother hiding it now. The look on her face is victory. Clean and open and almost peaceful. See, she says, barely above a whisper. She knew who was there for her. Rick reaches over and squeezes Diane's knee. A little celebration. Aunt Linda looks at me from across the table. Her lips part slightly, like she wants to say something, but she drops her gaze instead. Barbara and Joan exchange a glance. They don't look at me. I sit still. My hands are flat on the table. And inside my head I hear Grandma's voice. I've taken care of it. But right now, that sounds like a lie. Diane doesn't wait for Callahan to finish. She stands, dabs her eyes with a tissue, the same choreographed grief from the funeral. She addresses the room like she's accepting an award. I know this is emotional for everyone, but Mom always knew who was there for her. I gave up everything to take care of her. I quit my book club. I rearranged my entire schedule. But I was there every morning and every night. She pauses, turns to me. Grace couldn't even bother to visit. Not once in 3 months. My mother died wondering why her own granddaughter abandoned her. The words hit me like a slap. Because they're designed to. She's using the wall she built between me and Grandma as proof that I didn't care enough to climb it. Barbara shakes her head slowly. Joan closes her eyes. Rick straightens in his chair. It's true. Miss Grace didn't show up once. I open my mouth. But what do I say? They weren't there when I called 11 times. They didn't see me standing on the porch. They didn't sit in that hospice parking lot. All they know is what Diane told them, and Diane has been telling stories about me my entire life. The room feels smaller. Every pair of eyes carries the same quiet accusation. Even Aunt Linda won't look at me now. Diane sits back down, smoothing her dress. Yes, she reaches up and touches Grandma's pearl earrings. The gesture is almost obscene, like she's adjusting a crown. And I realize this is her masterpiece. She locked me out, then turned my absence into evidence against me. She stole 3 months from me and Grandma, and now she's using those 3 months to steal my grandmother's memory too. I have nothing left to lose. I look down at the table. My hands are trembling and I press them flat to make it stop, but it doesn't stop. Maybe she's right. The thought comes uninvited, but it comes hard. Maybe I should have tried harder. Driven there every day, called the police, done something besides write cards that probably ended up in the trash. Maybe I didn't deserve anything from Grandma because I didn't do enough to deserve her. I'm one breath away from standing up and walking out. Then I look up. Callahan hasn't moved. He hasn't closed his folder. He hasn't stood. He's sitting at the head of the table with his hands folded over the documents, and the second section, the one under the red clip, is still untouched. He's waiting. He let Diane speak. He let her finish. He let the whole room absorb her version. And now he's sitting there with something still in front of him. Diane catches it too. She looks at the folder and her eyebrows pinch together. A flicker, barely visible, but I see it. Mrs. Myers, Callahan says, his voice unchanged, as steady as a metronome. If you're finished, I'd like to continue. Diane laughs. One short syllable, more air than sound. Oh, is there more? Callahan removes the red clip. He lifts the second stack of papers and sets them squarely in front of him. There is an amendment to this will, he says, filed 3 days before Elaine Whitfield's death. The room goes silent. Not quiet. Silent. At the kind of silence where you can hear the clock on the wall and someone's stomach and the pigeons outside the window all at once. Diane's smile dissolves. What? Callahan speaks the way a surgeon works. Precise. Unhurried. No wasted motion. In addition to the original will, Elaine Whitfield executed a codicil and simultaneously established a separate legal instrument, an irrevocable trust, 3 days before her passing. He lets the word sit there. Irrevocable. For those unfamiliar, an irrevocable trust, once executed, cannot be revoked, amended, or contested by any party. It exists outside the probate process entirely. Diane grips the edge of the table. What trust? I never heard about any trust. Callahan doesn't respond to her directly. He reads, "The trust designates the following assets to be held for the sole benefit of Grace Elaine Myers." He pauses just long enough for the room to feel the weight of my middle name. Grandma gave me that. First, the savings accounts totaling $890,000 to be transferred into the trust in their entirety. Diane's chair scrapes back an inch. Second, the residential property at 412 Maple Street, title to be transferred to the trust, with Grace Myers as sole beneficiary. Third, the personal journals of Elaine Whitfield, 14 volumes spanning 1980 to the week of her death, designated specifically for Grace Myers. Diane is on her feet. That's not possible. She was on morphine. She couldn't have signed anything. Callahan removes his glasses, sets them on the table, and looks at her directly. The amendment was witnessed by a licensed hospice nurse and notarized by a mobile notary public. Elaine was assessed as mentally competent by her attending physician on the same day the documents were signed. He replaces his glasses. The trust is irrevocable. It cannot be contested, altered, or dissolved. Barbara's hand covers her mouth. Joan leans forward. Aunt Linda is perfectly still. Furthermore, Callahan continues, Elaine requested that the witnessing nurse be available to confirm the circumstances of the signing, should any party raise a dispute. He nods toward the conference room door. It opens. And the woman who walks in is someone I've seen twice before, once through a windshield in a hospice parking lot, and once at a funeral, where she touched my shoulder and told me my grandmother talked about me every day. She sits in the chair Callahan has set beside his own. Her name, I learn in the next breath, is Margaret Dawson. Everyone calls her Maggie. She's a licensed hospice nurse with Meadowbrook Home Health. She was assigned to my grandmother for her final 6 weeks. Maggie looks at Diane. Then she speaks to the room. Elaine was fully alert on the day of signing. She dictated the terms of the trust herself, clearly and without hesitation. Diane's mouth opens, but nothing comes out. Elaine told me that her daughter had restricted her granddaughter's visits, Maggie continues. She said her daughter had taken her phone. She told me she'd been pressured into signing the original will during a period when she was too weak to resist. Joan makes a small sound. Barbara turns and stares at Diane. Elaine asked me to contact Grace from my personal phone. That text message, that was me. And she asked me to witness the new documents because she wanted someone outside the family to protect her final wishes. The room reshapes itself. I can feel it. The way gravity shifts when truth enters a space that's been holding a lie. Barbara and Joan are no longer looking at me with pity. They're looking at Diane. And Diane looks like she's been turned inside out. Callahan opens a slim envelope from inside the folder. Elaine included a request that one specific passage from her final journal be read aloud at this proceeding. He unfolds a photocopied page. I recognize Grandma's handwriting. Looping, careful cursive, the same penmanship she used to label every jar in her pantry. Callahan reads, My daughter Diane has not allowed Grace to visit me in over 2 months. She took my phone from the nightstand while I slept. She brought papers and said I needed to sign them. I was tired. I signed. But I should not have, and I knew it the moment the pen left the paper. The room is so quiet I can hear Aunt Linda breathing. I love my daughter, but I cannot let her take everything from Grace. Grace is the only one who ever loved me without wanting something in return. Diane sits down hard. She was confused. She didn't know what she was writing. Callahan doesn't look up. He keeps reading. I cannot say goodbye to Gracie in person. Diane won't allow it. So I am saying goodbye this way. And everything I have, I leave to her. Not because Diane doesn't deserve love, but because Diane chose money over family, and Grace never did. Aunt Linda's hand is pressed over her mouth. Barbara is crying. Joan has turned away from Diane entirely. Diane's voice cracks. Those journals don't prove anything. The entries are dated and consistent across 14 volumes, Callahan says, closing the page. Elaine's cognitive state was documented by hospice staff throughout her care. I'm crying. Not because of the money, not because of the house, because my grandmother fought for me from a bed she couldn't leave, with a pen and a nurse and a plan she built in secret. She said goodbye the only way they let her. Diane turns to Callahan. Her voice shakes, but it's anger, not grief. I'll contest this. She was dying. She was medicated. No court will uphold this. Callahan folds his hands. Same posture he's held all afternoon, not a hair out of place. Mrs. Myers, but the trust is irrevocable. It was established as a separate legal instrument, independent of the will. It is not subject to probate and cannot be contested through that process. A licensed physician documented Elaine's mental competency on the day of execution. The notarization is valid. The witness is a licensed healthcare professional with no personal connection to the beneficiary. Every sentence lands like a door closing. Diane spins toward me. Her composure is gone. Makeup smudged, big hands shaking, the careful performance stripped away. You did this. You put her up to this. I look at my mother, and for the first time today, I speak. I didn't know about any of this until 5 minutes ago. You're a liar. I haven't spoken to Grandma in 3 months, Mom. My voice is level. I don't raise it. I don't need to. You made sure of that. The room holds its breath. Rick's arms have uncrossed. He's leaning slightly away from Diane, more like a man who just realized he's standing next to something that's about to collapse. Barbara turns to Joan and says nothing. She doesn't have to. Aunt Linda is staring at Diane with an expression I've never seen on her face before. Not sympathy, not fear. Recognition. Like she's finally seeing something she's been looking away from for years. The narrative my mother built, dutiful daughter, ungrateful granddaughter, is crumbling in front of 7 witnesses. And she can't lie fast enough to rebuild it. Callahan turns to me. Miss Myers, do you have anything you'd like to say? I stand up. I don't rush it. I smooth my dress. Grandma would have wanted me to look put together. And I look around the room. Barbara, Joan, Aunt Linda, Rick, Maggie. Then I look at my mother. I'm not going to fight with you, Mom. Grandma made her decision, and I'm going to honor it. The same way I would have honored her, if you'd let me see her. Diane's jaw tightens. You don't deserve any of it. Maybe, but Grandma thought I did. I hold her gaze. And her voice is the one that matters in this room. My mother has no answer for that. Not because she can't speak, but because there's nothing she can say that 7 people in this room will believe anymore. I turn to Callahan. Mr. Callahan, I'd like to accept the trust as written. And I'd like to proceed with changing the locks on my grandmother's house this week. He nods once. I'll handle the paperwork. I pick up my bag. I push in my chair, because Grandma raised me to leave a room the way I found it. I walk toward the door. Behind me, Diane's voice, stripped raw. You'll regret this, Grace. I don't turn around. I don't respond. I walk through the doorway and down the narrow stairs, past the hardware store, and out into the afternoon sun of a town square where kids are still chasing pigeons and the world has no idea what just happened in that second-floor conference room. But I know. Grandma knew. And that's enough. Small towns have short memories, but fast mouths. Within a week, everyone who matters knows. Not because I tell them, I don't tell anyone. The story walks out of that conference room on 6 pairs of legs and spreads like weather. Barbara calls me on a Sunday. Her voice is thick with something between shame and grief. Grace, I owe you an apology. At the funeral, the way we looked at you. We had no idea Diane kept you away. Your grandmother talked about you constantly. She showed us your cards, the ones you mailed every week. She kept them in a basket by her bed. She got them. Grandma got my cards. I have to sit down. Joan calls the same afternoon, says almost the same thing. And then adds, we told Diane we won't be attending her Christmas gathering this year, or any year. Aunt Linda drives to my apartment. She stands in my doorway and cries. I should have asked more questions. I knew something was off. Diane was too controlling about the visits, too insistent that everything was fine, but I didn't want to get involved. You're involved now, I tell her. She nods. And I hear through Aunt Linda that Diane spent the following week calling every estate attorney within 100 miles. Not one of them would take the case. An irrevocable trust, properly executed, with physician documentation and an independent witness. There's no angle of attack. Every lawyer told her the same thing. It's done. Rick, I'm told, has stopped being supportive. The inheritance he counted on evaporated in a single afternoon. And now all that's left is Diane's credit card debt and the second mortgage on their house. He and Diane argue every night. Loud enough for their neighbors to hear. 2 weeks after the reading, my phone rings. Diane. I almost don't answer. But something in me knows this is the last conversation we'll have for a long time, and I want to walk away clean. Grace. Her voice has changed. The sharpness is gone. Now it's soft, pleading. The victim voice. I've heard it my whole life. It usually aimed at other people. This time it's aimed at me. Grace, I'm your mother. You can't shut me out. I took care of Grandma for years. I deserve something. You deserve to be heard, Mom. So I'm listening. What exactly did you do for Grandma in those last 3 months? Silence. You took her phone. You locked her door. You told her neighbors she'd moved. You kept me away from her deathbed. My voice is steady. Each sentence is a fact, not an accusation. And then you stood at her funeral and told a room full of people that I abandoned her. I did what I had to do. And Grandma did what she had to do. Longer silence. I can hear her breathing, uneven, ragged. I love you, Mom, but I don't trust you. And I'm not going to let you control me the way you controlled her. Don't call me again unless you're ready to be honest, truly honest, about what happened. I hang up. That phone call was one of the hardest things I've ever done. A part of me wanted to forgive her right there. Part of me wanted to scream. And a quieter part kept wondering, did she ever really love Grandma? Or was it always about the money? What do you think? Was Diane always this way? Or did desperation turn her into someone she never meant to become? Have you ever had to draw a line with your own parent? Tell me in the comments. Without Grandma's money, reality catches up to Diane fast. Aunt Linda fills me in, not to gossip, but because she thinks I should know. Diane owes $43,000 in credit card debt. She and Rick took out a second mortgage 2 years ago to remodel their kitchen. The monthly payments were manageable only because Diane assumed the inheritance would cover everything. She told Rick as much, promised him. He built a budget around money that wasn't his. Now there is no inheritance. And Rick is the kind of man who keeps score. Their arguments aren't private anymore. The neighbors on both sides have heard the shouting. Rick sleeps in the guest room. Aunt Linda says he's already talked to an attorney, not an estate attorney, a divorce attorney. Diane tries to rebuild her reputation at church. She tells the congregation a version of the story where she's the wronged mother and I'm the scheming grandchild. But Barbara and Joan got there first. They told the truth quietly, to the people who mattered. The pastor pulls Diane aside after service for a private conversation. She doesn't return the following Sunday. A week later, I get an email. Long, 5 paragraphs. I'm sorry. I was scared. I was in over my head. Can we start over? I read every word. I sit with it. I think about Grandma, who loved Diane despite everything, who wrote in her journal that she wondered where Diane's selfishness came from and whether she was partly to blame. I don't respond. Not because I'm cruel. But because I've finally learned something. It took me 28 years to understand. Every apology from my mother has always been a door back to control. And this time, I choose to keep the door closed. The first time I open the door of 412 Maple Street with my own key, I stand in the entryway for a full minute and just breathe. The house smells the way it always has, lemon polish, old books, and something warm underneath that I can only describe as Grandma. Her kitchen still has the yellow curtains with the tiny flowers. Her armchair still holds the shape of her. The crocheted blanket she kept on the back of it is exactly where she left it. I walk through every room like I'm visiting a museum of the best parts of my childhood. The marks on the kitchen doorframe where she measured my height every birthday. The windowsill in the living room where she kept her violets. At the reading nook under the stairs where I used to hide with a flashlight and a stack of library books. In her bedroom, on the shelf beside the window, I find them. 14 journals. Dark green covers, numbered in her handwriting. 1980 to 2024. 44 years of a woman's interior life, lined up like soldiers. I sit on the floor and open the last one. The final page has my name on it. Gracie, if you're reading this, it means my plan worked. Don't be sad, be brave. And don't let anyone make you small again. Love always, Grandma E. I press the journal to my chest and I cry. Not the numb, shocked grief of the funeral, not the frustrated tears from the hospice parking lot. These are the tears you cry when someone who loved you reaches across the impossible distance of death and puts their hand on your shoulder one last time. She couldn't say goodbye in person, so she wrote it down and trusted it would find me. It found me. And I move into the Maple Street house on a Saturday in January. Aunt Linda helps me carry boxes. The place needs work. The porch railing is loose, the upstairs bathroom faucet drips, and the heating system makes a sound like a cat trapped in the walls. But it's mine. It's Grandma's gift, and I'm going to take care of it the way she took care of me. I use a portion of the trust to pay off my student loans. $31,000 gone. I set up a savings account. I don't buy a new car. I don't redecorate. I keep teaching second grade at Millbrook Elementary. My students don't know anything has changed, and that's how I want it. Every evening, I read a few pages of Grandma's journals. She writes about her girlhood in this very house, about marrying Grandpa, who died before I was born, about raising Diane. And here the pages get complicated. She loved Diane fiercely, but she saw the selfishness early. She writes about it with more sadness than anger. In one entry from 2009, she writes, Diane learned to take from somewhere, and I'm afraid it might have been from watching me give too much. She wasn't just protecting me. She was reckoning with her own part in the story. even at the end. I call Maggie to thank her. We meet at a diner in town. Over coffee, she tells me things I'll carry forever. Your grandmother was the bravest patient I ever had. She planned everything from that bed: the trust, the codicil, the journals, the timing. She had me call Mr. Des Callahan 3 times to make sure every detail was right. Maggie smiles. And she smiled the whole time. That's my grandma, fighting with a pen and a smile. I used to think that being a good daughter meant never saying no. I thought silence was loyalty. I thought if I just loved hard enough, if I was patient enough, if I was small enough, my mother would eventually love me back the same way. Grandma taught me something different, not through lectures, not through advice. It through what she did from a hospital bed with a failing body and a clear mind. She taught me that protecting someone you love sometimes means making the hard choice, even when it costs you peace. I don't hate my mother. I want to be clear about that. I don't wish anything bad on her. Some nights I still think about that email she sent. Can we start over? And part of me aches. She's my mom. That doesn't go away. But I've stopped waiting for her to become someone she's not. Here's where things stand. I don't call Diane. She doesn't call me. If that changes someday, it'll be because she's ready to be honest, not because I caved. I don't let Rick's texts get past my block list. I see Aunt Linda every other week for dinner. She's learning to cook Grandma's